And we have signed in on the roll call sheet, and we have myself with Mr. Stetson's proxy, and Laura Mason has Mr. Gallegos' property. And so, God, it's been one of those days, proxies. So, we have our agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda? Ms. Martinez isn't here, this is her.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor, second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And public comment. We have a couple people signed up.
You too.
Diane Goodman.
You want me to sit over here, or should I move the chair over
You,
here?
actually, yeah, just come sit up
Oh,
here.
okay, more.
Here's two more.
Yeah, that's fine. First, I would like to say, I guess I'll wait till Lisa's done.
Wait till everybody's sitting. All right, let's go.
First, I'd like to say thanks for the meeting that last time. It was refreshing, open, transparent. I'm really glad that it was recorded because it is a good example of what potential we have in our government to excel. So I want to say thanks for that. Secondly, I brought up last time about having the mayor participate in the city council meetings, and I don't know if that's something you're still considering or if it's not up for debate, but I did try to contact the mayor's office to see if he would be willing to voluntarily show up at the city council meetings, but that was a dead end. So I didn't know if that was something you're wanting to consider as part of the other potential charter changes, or even considering having him come quarterly would be wonderful. Just to come at all.
I have got that noted, and when we are discussing other items, we will bring that up and discuss whether that's something that we think is something that we ought to be looking at, or perhaps have other recommendations. So.
And the minutes for the meeting, the last one that didn't get added like it normally did, are you going to still continue to put the minutes on the agenda?
I'm playing catch up, so
That's okay.
I'm just now getting back, so
I understand.
they will get up just as soon as I'm able to get to all those
No
recordings.
problem. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I have a question.
Thank you.
Could you, my name's Doug, I'm on this task force, could you elaborate on what you mean by you asked if the mayor would attend and it was a dead end? Was there no response? Was there a response? And if you can share it, could you?
Sure, I'll be happy to share with you exactly what I did. I was so excited after the meeting. In fact, we were talking about it out in the garage, and we actually were talking with, I forget what your name is, I'm sorry.
Oh, Laura?
The meeting was excellent. So I decided I'm going to see if I can't get the mayor to attend by just asking as a citizen. So I contacted the mayor's office, and I was ultimately transferred over to Alan Armijo, who is the constituent services, left a message and followed up with an email saying what happened, and that Eric, Mr. Melendrez, you weren't here last time, but the city attorney had said that the only thing it would require is to change or designee to require the mayor to come. But I thought, well, if the mayor can come anyway, we should have him come.
Right, and let me clarify by coming, the request was the mayor's attendance at council meetings.
All council meetings?
Well, just anything. I mean, I was willing to, he doesn't come to the meetings, and we really need him there. I think it would be helpful. And so, anyway, I sent an email to Alan as a follow-up, and they never responded, which is not unusual.
So there was not a response?
There was no response at all,
Up to this point?
up to this point, exactly.
How long ago was that?
That was right after this last meeting. The
Okay.
next morning, I called up because I was on a roll, so, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Tad, I'm just gonna call you Tad because I can never
Absolutely.
pronounce your
Why
name,
not?
so come on in.
I guess I should. So you guys don't have to turn that on, right?
Right, that's perfect.
Thank you. My name's Ted, I go by Ted, been too long to my other name. So anyway, I agree with Diana. So, and let me just add it. If you go to county commissioners, Bernalillo County Commissioner meetings, you have county manager every meeting. That's mandatory. Why? Mayor hiding. So many people make this statement. Where is mayor? Where he's hiding? Why he's hiding? Well, of course, lately, he's on the radio, KKOV radio and so on. So anyway, yes, mayor, it is issue with mayor. Whatever mayor wants it, mayor he gets in present time. We all have to agree. All this, he organized with his veto. He gets his way. So anyway, that is one issue. Then another, when it comes to election. Well, 8.2%, we all know. I have from city clerk office, 8.2%, that's just people participated. Are eligible voters. Then, that is one issue, and another issue, 8%. That's important to know. What caught my attention, they have posted list right in present time. And how many signature were rejected? Can you believe it? 14,270 or something like that. Like that was ballot, but 6,700 invalid. That tells you about some of these people. Well, of course, this has to do with 8% money goes to the revenue, goes to city of Albuquerque. That one project, or several projects, But it's, so, it's something to think about it. I believe that that's very important to think about it. And then, maybe we can do something about it. Because right now, APD, it is problem. And APD, I spoke to David Barco, right? Yeah, Mr. Barco. And he can repeat what my conversation. I don't mind what I said. That is, they deserving what they got. I'm sorry I acted so negative. They deserving what they get, because that is most these officers, Rio Rancho, to here.
Yeah, I don't know that we want to go down that particular line right here.
Right.
At this meeting.
But
But we
anyway,
appreciate your testimony.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Heather, I'm gonna ask if you will wait until we get to the, two items here,
That's
so we
perfect.
can hear from the clerk and get her on her way.
Yes, that's perfect. I meant to sign in, not sign out.
Okay.
6,700.
Madam Clerk, why don't you introduce yourself? You're new, or fairly new. This was your first election.
Yes, my name is Natalie Howard, and I've been with the city of Albuquerque for 20 years. So I've been in various areas of government, and so it's been an honor to be in this particular position and to be able to put on an election. So there were a couple of things that we wanted to talk to you about. Thank you for inviting me tonight, and Eric, for our attorney. There's some cleanup that we want to propose to the charter specifically, and I'm going to have Eric actually go through them in more detail.
I believe everybody has a copy of the memo, which doesn't say that on the very top. It says that city clerk's proposed amendments in bold to city charter articles.
This one, the single page one?
Actually, 2 pages.
Well, 2 pages, single page, too.
So, these are the three major areas that have been overruled by federal jurisprudence, in the district court, in the 10th Circuit, and in the U.S. Supreme Court, respectively. The reason for suggesting these amendments is that it's very confusing, and a lot of calls to city clerk Fields has to explain that this is something that isn't enforced or isn't being practiced, and there's a lot of questions about the state of the law, and it is confusing if one reads the letter of the charter and finds that these provisions are still in the charter and seem to be authority to govern our city. So these are the proposals that would, we believe would do the exact amount of adjustments to the charter, either deleting provisions. There's only one insertion, and that would be under section F, 4F of the campaign finance rules, under Article 13. So we just open it up to comment.
I have some questions. Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, members of the task force, Mr. Eric, I don't know what your last name is. The case law you cited, Holmans v. City of Albuquerque, Greenbound, and Giant Cab Company v. Amy Daly, City Clerk, Enterprises Club Freedom Club PAC et al. V. Bennett. Are those the only cases that you're relying upon to make these changes, or are you also looking at federal laws? Would any federal laws impact any of the changes in this document?
Well, these cases do apply federal and local law. So there's many citations in these cases that go back in time with federal jurisprudence, some of it especially coming out of Citizens United.
Right, that's what I was getting at.
But we're basically following, these changes follow the black letter ruling without either going farther or less far, if you will, as to what the holdings were in most cases.
Okay, is there any way, would it be too cumbersome or overburdensome, Mr. Chairman, to ask that we get all the case law as a background document?
Yeah, let me ask a question first, and maybe Laura or Bruce can join in this. Are these the sort of provisions that were anticipated that could be removed by the council at the request of the clerk in either ordinance or resolution?
Yes.
So that's a vehicle, I think, that might be available to get these done. The clerical errors and areas where we were overruled, or where the city's regulation was overruled. I know there's others in there
Yeah, I was
as
just,
well. I mean, the term limits, I think, is still in there, and that was kicked out in '95.
And actually, we'd be open to hear about other ones as well, such as
We drafted excuse me, Mr. Chair. We drafted a resolution about, gosh, I don't know, several years ago, that included all these. I'm not sure it had the last one where you inserted some language, but we also there were cleanups in there. And it's in the form of a council bill, since the council has to be the one to approve it, or the body to approve it. So let me just give you a copy of this,
Sure.
and you can
That'd be
decide
terrific.
what you'd like to keep and what
Sure.
you'd like to add or take out, and that'll get you a little further along, I think.
sounds good.
But yeah, and maybe it's not a bad idea to kind of bring it to this group, just to say, we're taking this to the council, since you're
Yeah.
looking at the charter, but I don't think you need to take it to this group. I think you can take it.
Yeah. And Eric, you might go ahead and just email to the members of the task force the cases you've cited here.
Sure.
And I can go over them real quick, because a lot of this happened when I was city attorney.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
A1 and 2, or no, A 1 and 2 were, that's the Homans case. This was from the mayor's race in '97, as I recall, and might have been 90. Yeah, no, I think it was the '97 race. When was it? No, 2001 race. And we had a limitation on contributions, the total number of contributions and expenditures, and the Homan's case itself was on expenditures, as I recall, wasn't it? Yeah. And the court held that that was unconstitutional, violated the First Amendment, which had been the case in numerous cases around the country. And we did defend this, but and actually took it to the 10th Circuit, but it was pretty clear that was toast. But I will tell you, yeah. Let's see, the total contributions from any one person more than 5%. And I think that comes under the, at least the Homan's case. B is, this was a case after I was gone, but it was something that I was concerned about from the beginning. No candidate shall accept a contribution from a corporation. And this, I think, was in the last mayor's election, and I think some supporters of the mayor, or David, was this were you involved in this one? Kinsel, I bet Kinsel.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it has Kinsel written all over it, that's true. And they challenged a provision of the charter that prohibited contributions from corporations. And then C is really, I think probably Eric's analysis is right here, that it's probably covered by Greenbaum. And then the final one is, this is what we've been discussing with regard to the open and ethical elections. This case, while not involving the city of Albuquerque, involved a state statute that the city used as one of its models in drafting its ordinance.
Is that the Arizona
Yeah,
Free Enterprise Club?
that's the one that struck down the matching funds provision of open and ethical elections. But what I was thinking that we might do is just hold on to this, and then maybe at our next meeting on the 19th, unless anybody has an objection, we could suggest to the council that we recommend they adopt a resolution taking all this out.
This is just more of a housekeeping thing than anything else, but and this mayor didn't attended, so I'm sorry if I'm going around it. I imagine there's like a drafting guide for an ordinance or for putting something like this into an ordinance that would be in this form, which is probably just a preliminary thing. It looks like it might be a little bit ambiguous as to like you have like typing and an explanation also right next to where actual ordinances are written.
Yeah.
And usually those would be italicized or something, make it real clear that.
Why don't we?
This isn't in that form.
Why don't we do this? Eric, could you, I think working maybe from what Laura and Bruce had done when they were on council staff, find that old resolution. I think it covers quite a few of the things and some more of the little clerical things as well. Take a look at that and see if that's acceptable to you, and if you have anything to add to it.
Right.
You may have some things to add to it, and then we could go from there. Like I don't know. So why don't we, and then get that to us before, a few days before our meeting. I think you could probably use that. And then, so did you notice anything in the election code or open and ethical elections, or that are not here, but just anything that was problematic in terms of running the election that gave you heartburn this time around?
Specifically, these were the major ones that we had to keep explaining to people and
Right.
providing them the backup and supporting documentation for. And this was the first year we used our campaign management system, which was really effective, but we're making some changes there to make sure that everything's jiving well. So there are a couple of other things that I want to look at. Deadlines for canvassing to make sure that things are consistent,
Yeah.
things like that.
You might sit down with Eric too and look at the recommendations that we made to the council, because we'll be taking, in August, because we made some recommendations on the election code and the open and ethical election that have different systems are developed, different ways of petition gathering and qualifying and things along those lines. And they might be useful to you.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Mason?
When you said make the canvassing deadlines consistent, do you mean the state law, like going from 3 to 10 days?
Right, because we have, so I just want to look at it, but
Oh,
because
okay.
we do have the requirement of the photo ID that a citizen has if they do a provisional ballot because they didn't bring in their ID to come in 10 days by 5 o'clock on the 10th day after the
Right.
election. So the state statute says that we have to complete the canvass in 3 days, yet we really can't complete the canvass until we know that everyone's vote has been counted. So that's just something that I thought of, Eric and I still need to discuss this, so we haven't looked at everything yet, but there are some things that I still.
You know, we are going to be working on election code and open and ethical election issues and maybe even the ethics code issues next time around. So if you see anything in those areas, if you could get those, because we probably will be formulating our recommendations to the council. I think we're probably not going to be, we'll be formulating our recommendations and we'll see in what form they come out.
So if you ever want to sit down for an hour or half hour or so, I'd be happy to, and I bet Bruce would remember, there's a guy named Mark Shoesmith who might remember, who could point you to the language in the state law that allows you to have the 3 days, or the 10 days,
Oh,
even though
okay.
the state law says
Yeah,
things.
we
So
haven't
there's a
really
bunch of, yeah, there are
Some
about
of that-
10 different things you have to,
Yeah, it's sort of
Apply.
like home rule, but it's.
Right.
It's in the actual statute, but I think
It's
we're probably good.
really-
We're fine.
Yeah, I think we're-
yeah, you're fine. But it's not a bad idea to look at all that stuff with new eyes.
One of the things that we've been talking about, this is a different thing, is we've been talking about the difficulty during redistricting years in meeting all the time requirements of the election, and whether there were things that could be done. Ideas that have been discussed have been moving the date of the election in redistricting year, moving the date of the election to March to be consistent with all the other towns and cities around the state. I think we backed off any thought of moving it to the general election because of just the problems with the ballot. And I will report to the committee, I did talk to the county clerk, who is going to be coming to our meeting on the 19th to talk about some of the questions we had. So any observations you've got, and you haven't faced that question yet, but that's, when you've got to have things happening with the election and starting in June and May, and you don't have the information from the census on what the districts are to do the districts, you can't get the redistricting done in time to start the election. So we've been looking at ways we might resolve that. And if you have any ideas on that now, that'd be great. And if not, if you think of anything. Are there any other questions?
Why is that
come up so prominently in the last election or two. Haven't they run into this before? With the election?
I don't think it happened in 2000, I don't remember. No, we had a problem in 2000, that was the one where Jim vetoed 3 different redistricting bills.
What about 1990, if anyone would remember?
We didn't have public financing until.
No,
2000.
this is just regular election.
This is the,
You know, the changing
Redistricting.
districts for purposes of
Doesn't involve-
who we're gonna vote for.
Everybody just worked hard to get it done by a June 1 deadline.
Yeah.
And
we
they
can't
have
do that?
special meetings that final week in May, and they just did it.
and I think even in 2000, when Jim vetoed it 3 times, or twice,
Twice.
on the 3rd time, they got it done in time.
Of
They
course,
did.
Even
if
with
They
there's
did.
court, if there's court challenges, that could delay it too, right?
Yeah.
They could,
Right, but,
yes.
but if they got it done, why can't we just get it done?
Well, now we've got a much, at that point, we had from April to June, so 2 months. And then I'm not sure if at that point there was a committee, redistricting committee required in the charter, because that got added at some point, and that lengthened the process a little bit too. But now you've got a couple weeks to get it done, and it's a much different situation with the deadlines imposed by public finance.
Can there be election period budgetary allocations to give the clerk the manpower and woman power that she needs?
It's time period. You start the election. What's the first thing, when are the,
Exploratory time period is March, so we actually
yeah,
started
it started, the election process has started before we have census data.
Which is the beginning of April, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so they just don't match up.
And the census data comes in,
April 1st.
That's when it has to be given to us. We usually get it a few days before that.
for the federal government
Right.
gives us that?
Yeah.
So
Now-
the problem is the timeline that they imposed when they started a public financing
Yeah, it's,
circumstance does not overlap neatly with the redistricting.
And
could we move that forward or back to accommodate it?
well, I think a number of ideas were discussed, like using preliminary census data, which is available the year before, to at least get started, and then on April 1st, you have your final meeting and approve it.
Geez, I didn't know that existed. I don't practice in that area, but that's remarkable. You can get at least.
Well, I think there
whole
was a
year
great
ahead.
deal of resistance, and even now, even with the final census data, we have a district with 26,000 registered voters, and that's our smallest district, and 45,000 registered voters in the largest. And that is, what, 5 years after the census?
Oh, it was over before this redistricting process.
Hey,
One comment,
this is your area, you
Yeah.
can talk to it.
the software they have now to draw district is so sophisticated that there is not a technical issue here. This is all a political issue. It's all a political issue. I mean, you can draw a plan, if you put the parameters everybody wants, and you can draw a plan as fast as you can with the computer. So there isn't a manpower issue to this.
Yeah, I mean, that may be the sort of thing that practically can be done if there is no change, is that you put all the criteria in, and then on April 1st, you punch the button, and there it is. Of course, you know, nobody will accept that. Somebody's always gonna fiddle because,
Yeah,
you
but
know,
if it can, I'm sorry, Steve.
I was just gonna say, Lori, didn't you talk to what's the research and polling guy on board?
Sandra?
Sandra.
Yeah.
And he said that preliminary data is not something they would ever stand by.
Well, we spoke with Michael Stone because that's where the direction we were going that election. We were gonna try to use preliminary with some tweaks based on housing permits and things like that. They were gonna try to update. And I talked to them, and they were willing to kind of go out on a limb way back then, but when I talked to him more recently, he said, we were pretty close on all the districts except the far southwest, District 3, which was the brand new one. And he said that one we were off by several percentage points, so he was uncomfortable, I think. But it's one way to look at
Well,
it.
that was gonna happen. When the decision was made, when the criteria was made to have 3 districts on the west side, you know that one of them was gonna be a bad district. There's no way not to be able to do it.
Well, he's talking about the old districts, though. He was just saying we
No, no, I mean-
misjudged the growth on that. on
Yeah,
that
no,
one.
but to have 3 complete districts
Oh,
on
I
the
see.
west side, you are gonna have one of them that's gonna be way over, or one of them is gonna be way under. You can't do it any other way. Doug?
I'm gonna go out on this and just say, what David just explained, well, it's radical, I know, because it tilts toward integrity versus politics. But what's wrong with putting the demographic data in, the numerical data in, all of the data, and whatever it says is what it is, and let the burden be, obviously, on the contestors who are somehow going to have to argue that what Lady Justice blinded says is, no pun intended, black and white, or whatever, that's not black and white.
Because what you're asking for would require a charter amendment, and I cannot see 7 or 6 votes for 7 votes for that to be.
Well, let's expose the reality of what they are voting
Well,
against.
I oppose that, because I think elected officials need to make the ultimate decision and not a machine. I mean, whoever it is, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, or people who took their honeymoon in the Soviet Union and haven't come back.
I
Any
respect
of
that, Mr. Chairman.
Any of those.
With respect, you just said no because I oppose that. Respectfully, that's not our
I know.
criterion here.
Let me just ask this question. Is anybody interested in that scenario?
Being completely fair, yes.
All right, noted.
Thank you.
If I could just comment on that for a minute. In an ideal world, I think it has some merit. I will say, though, that as I understand the lay of the constitutional law, politics is not an inappropriate factor in connection with the establishment of districts. The Constitution allows
Absolutely it
politics to
did,
play a role.
because Jefferson was
And-
dead set
and-
against computers.
And my
You're
strong,
right.
my strong sense is that that is a function that any council I could imagine would want to continue to participate in, and that I respect the fact that there is a political element to the establishment of this.
Okay.
So that's sort of where I am.
There's also no reason to believe a machine would be fair. Slot machines are unfair to me. Golf tables are unfair to me.
Yeah, but David, now you're testifying against yourself, what you said a few minutes
All
ago.
right, let's try and wrap this up, since we're not going to be going anywhere with this.
I would be favoring some sort of independent commission to look at redistricting that sort of removed it.
That's already been removed in the courts. I believe it's being fought out terribly in one state where, yeah, well, it was ruled all the work that the independent commission, I'm sorry, I don't remember the jurisdiction, did was thrown out because it specifically, yeah, I think it was California, alleviated or obviated the, up to that point, responsibility of redistricting in elected representatives. That does not mean what we're talking about still couldn't be finally approved by an elected council.
But then you get this, no matter how super fast the computer gets, you can't get it done, because the council needs 6 weeks to get it done. So you give them that at the second meeting in April. They're not going to have it done until the second meeting in May.
There are legislative quote-unquote tactics or not strategies.
State law requires it, not to beat a dead horse, state law requires a 2-week notification on an ordinance, publication on an ordinance.
2 weeks, you just said 6.
No, before you start. So anyway, no one was interested other than you, and so we got a lot to do tonight. So does anybody want to continue this discussion?
No,
Call
if
the
you don't
question.
want to, I would not want to continue to discuss a completely fair way of redistricting districts for the purposes of keeping the calendar in place for uniform elections year to year.
I think that we're open to suggestions like that, but not this particular one,
Okay.
okay? All right. Okay, let's see, anything else that you want to, any other information you want to give us, or any other observations you want to make about the elections? And
Not at this time. I appreciate you providing that information to us, so, we can take a look at what has already been on review, so.
All right, terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Now we're through with the clerk's presentation. We can actually get into what we were just doing and discussing the work plan. Let's move to 5A. And do we have any further ideas in this area in terms of timing on the election? What can, what do we want to recommend? Let me put it this way. 19th, by the 19th, if there is a specific, written, cogent way to keep going the way, or keep the existing schedule, let's start with that. Then if not, let's discuss moving it to March, the first Tuesday in March, like all other cities in the state. And then third will be a discussion of moving it just in election years. Does that sound fair? Or I'm sorry, census years.
If it is moved to March, what happens with the census year? Doesn't that even make it more problematic?
No.
March election.
Your next election.
Next 5 months.
Okay.
Ms. Martinez.
Yes, sir. I was thinking that, I feel that what happened with this last election is that people don't really realize there's an election. And if we had things that coincided or with other cities, then the media and everyone would know, okay, the first Tuesday in March, I have to vote my local races, rather than these disparate timeframes, because I just think that it confuses everyone. I know, I used to live in Edgewood, and they have their elections at different times than Albuquerque, and from Bernalillo County, and there's 3 counties out there, and it's just so confusing to people that I think that they don't even go and vote.
Right.
So if we
They don't-
could standardize things.
Don't vote in Albuquerque either. They don't vote in national elections. Last year's national election had the lowest turnout since 1942. People don't vote anymore, which is why I said at the last meeting, I think, I'm happy to see both the Byrne and the Donald out there, because I think they're exciting, from whatever point of view that you are, they're at least exciting voters. I think that's the sort of thing we've been talking about. The other thing that I forgot, and I'm going to add it, is that we recommend that the legislature be approached to combine all political subdivision elections, the school board, the AMACAs, the this, that, and the other.
Under home rule?
No,
I mean,
the legislature would be
I
approached.
understand, make it uniform statewide.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, just briefly, one of the big problems with consolidating elections is just the ballot itself, and we go back to paper because of the problems with electronics, so I don't know if there could be some technological wonder that could change that it would be terrific.
I think we're not talking about combining with the general.
Okay.
We're just talking about it would be, you know, that issue still presents itself because there's school bond issues. But one of the things that we're gonna have the advantage of when we take this up next week is that, I think I mentioned, we've got the county clerk will be here for our meeting on the 19th, and I promised that I'd put her right up front, so. Yes,
Possibly to move the election to March for every election, so not just every 10 years, but every,
Right.
just move a period to, okay, that.
Yeah.
I had,
Odd year.
yeah,
every year would be,
oh, that's a good idea.
I like, that's the one I'm tending towards right now. And it's one we can do, it's one the city can do. It's simple. You'd have to have one little holdover, one holdover council and one holdover, maybe, no, if you did it so it's effective when it's 2, 4, 6, and 8, it wouldn't affect the mayor's race, so. That,
Does this affect other elections too, more local
No.
elections like water and flood control and?
no, because those are all set by statute.
Okay.
Now, a lot of them, well, the Conservancy district was what, in June this year?
Yeah, we're dotted everywhere.
Amafka is on the general election. School board is in February of March on the years that the cities don't have elections. All the other municipal elections, at least all the general law, cities and towns are in March. There may be some other home rules that don't do March, but Santa Fe, when they went home rule, they picked March, and I think Las Cruces does March too. Okay, Steve, you know anything new? November.
In November, we're coming up right now.
Pardon?
It's coming up right now,
Oh, it is?
in November.
In November?
That's
Okay.
right. That's right.
Yes, Ms. Martinez?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, so for us to, let's say that we vote to move the elections to the first Tuesday in March, and the city council votes on that, then we have to get a sponsor, or a city council member would get a sponsor? What is the process after that? Let's say that in a hypothetical.
Well, this would have to go to the voters, because this is, the date of the elections is not in the election code. So this would go from us, the council then would vote to put it on the ballot, and then the voters would make that determination.
The voters in Albuquerque.
In Albuquerque.
So we would basically just be voting that we are in favor of the state legislature changing the law.
No. This would be if we changed it, if the city changed it tomorrow.
Okay, so if the city changes.
If we were to combine all the elections,
Right, that would require.
that would
state
require
legislature.
state law, yes.
Okay.
Mr. Antu.
I may have missed it, Mr. Chairman, but did the clerk have an opportunity to give her opinion on this very thing about moving things to March? I'd love to know what the clerk's office thinks.
Well, can you invite her back, or invite her to,
The way in and
Because they're gonna look to her, the council, and say, can it be done? Would you wanna do it?
well, it can be done. Why would, I don't know this
Clerk
now.
supporting something like that, I think is what I'm saying.
I
Well, the
understand.
clock starts whenever the clock
Yeah,
starts.
but let's just get the clerk's viewpoint, okay? So we can- all right, we're gonna get the clerk's viewpoint. All right, anything else? I think we've got it honed down to 4 options. And
Mr. Chair, did you include the option of pushing back the election by 6 weeks or so?
Yes.
Okay,
we got 4 options. Let me go over them again.
I heard that.
We're gonna entertain a super fast proposal that anybody might bring. Moving to March, along with the other municipalities in the state. moving it to a later date just in an election year, and then to recommend that the council join with other governments and seek a legislative solution.
Doesn't the first one need that third one? Everything moving to March need a,
Everything would just be, the city election moving to March.
all right,
Every
not
year.
combining any of the
Yeah,
others.
right.
Perhaps it can be incremental, you know, because the third one might take more time than the first one, right? We have more control over the approval of it. And my only concern throughout this whole thing has been uniformity, so that there aren't changes from election to election, changing the starting line and the ending line.
Well,
Just because of the confusion or just
The
lack of
starting,
participation.
yeah, the starting line and the ending line and all the time periods would remain exactly the same. Only election day would change.
I understand that. Well, you mean the distances between starting and.
Right.
Yeah, I know that, and, Myra was commenting that dates change, but in what we were talking about, all the clock would start at the same time, but there'd be more clocks starting if everything was combined, and that's why I wanted the clerk to, opine in on it. But I'm for the first one, as long as it can be uniform. Let's start with the first, see if we can then add the other elections after the legislature acts. Otherwise, we're gonna wait a few years, I think.
If we're willing to suggest right now that we recommend the election move to March, we can get some, no, I promise we wouldn't vote on anything tonight. No, I really do.
Well, this is good, you're putting it on notice now.
Yeah.
We can.
And I did announce, I think before you got here, we will be voting on the 19th, so get proxies, folks that primarily, I'm looking a certain direction on the table at a certain person about making sure that she or he has proxies.
We'll have that lined up.
All right. Giddy. Already. Okay. So what I will do, Doug, if you bring in, if you're able to come up with something.
What would you like, a motion?
No, in terms of your accelerated super fast approach.
I don't think I wanna go that way if, it would be contentious. I don't want to make a contentious thing. I wanna make a uniform system so that people can depend on knowing that's when our election is.
Then I'll put it on the agenda for, a vote on a recommendation, and that's all it would be, just a recommendation that, I think that's simple enough where we don't need an actual bill or anything. Is that, everybody okay with
Does
that?
the charter have to change?
The charter would have to
Oh,
change.
so we would make that, give some language, right, to the council, if you're gonna recommend?
I don't know that we need to give language to the council.
Oh, I thought that's what we do, like what we're doing with the election.
No, I think we talked about we've given language to the council.
Yeah,
We're not gonna, I think what we're gonna do is tonight we're gonna identify those areas where councilors have addressed concerns and then give them feedback from this committee on how they might deal with those concerns. For example, well, let's get this out of the way, then we'll move to open
Sure.
it up. Is everybody, I will just put down, we will vote on this issue, and to move the city elections to March 4th. Our first Tuesday of March. All right, now let's move to open and ethical election matters. And let's start with Common Cause. You're the ones who's been out lobbying and talking to the councilors more than any of us. You know what councilors have expressed concerns over, so why don't you come up and tell us about them?
All right, you want me to grab a seat up here?
Sure.
Here's the recorder. Thank you all so much for reconsidering all of these options again and taking a look at public financing. We have had an opportunity to meet with several of the councilors and hear a litany of different ideas as to how to remedy some of the issues that our public financing system is currently facing. And so what I did is I put together a couple of just basics here on these charts that were printed out for you guys. One will be to address the disclosure, and then the other one is to address public financing and the matching funds. So one of the ideas that we think has a lot of merit, and I didn't put it in here specifically, except for, actually no, I changed it a little bit here. So if you take a look, if you flip over the page on addressing Article 16 on the back side. So one issue that we have, of course, is that trigger funds were determined to be unconstitutional thanks to Arizona Free Enterprise. And so what that's done is it's left us with all of our city council members who elect to utilize public financing seem to have enough utilizing just the seed money that they are given. But the mayoral elections wouldn't have a prayer at this point in only getting an allocation of $350,000. So what's necessary is the constitutional fix of matching funds that we discussed on the last round here. And then additionally to that, from the feedback we got from city councilors, is that raising the cap a little bit for the mayoral race. We checked into the constitutionality of this and it is appropriate. So for city council races, they could receive a 4-to-1 match that would equal up to 200% of their initial allocation. For the mayoral race, it would be up to 300% of the initial allocation, which hopefully should bring it up to just over $1 million and thus make it viable and competitive for mayoral candidates to take public financing. So I think we had a couple of other suggestions that I think just coming in from city councilor feedback that I feel obliged to tell you about, but I'm not sure how viable some of them are. One of them was a mandatory, I don't use the term mandatory. It was that anyone who qualified to be either a candidate for city council or the mayor's race would be part of the public financing program, and then they could voluntarily opt out if they want to. Well, initially, we don't see any constitutional concerns for that. I can almost guarantee you would face a court challenge. And then secondarily to that, I don't know how that could be financed.
Could you repeat that one?
Yes. So it would be anyone who qualified to be a candidate, either for city council or the mayoral race, would automatically be part of a public financing program, our public financing program.
Why?
This was just one of the ideas that one of the councilors proposed.
Yeah.
Steve had proposed.
Yeah, this is what Steve had proposed too, Steve Gallegos. The idea is, if you go out and gather your petitions, and if you qualify as a candidate in gathering your petitions, you then become eligible for public financing, and at that time you could opt out and go private. Because the concern was, I think, of going around in certain areas of the town, and even $5 is a lot for people. Remember Councilor Gallegos has been talking about this a number of times.
Yes, I know he has, yeah. I have a question.
Okay?
One or two. So the $5 wouldn't be the methodology by which someone would be collecting those?
Under that proposal, if we accept it,
It would be, except, please clarify.
right now our recommendation is $5.
Yes.
If anybody wants to make a motion 2 weeks or on the 19th that we change to that, I'm going to give them an opportunity to do that. And I can tell you, I'm not hot on that.
You want to say change to not having $5?
Not having $5.
Okay, and wouldn't that trigger the eligibility of perhaps many more candidates than would be
Yes.
able to be sustained by
Yes.
public financing?
Yes.
And I also am concerned because I see it as intentional and not.
And I think, remember the testimony here that even Common Cause doesn't like this
Yeah.
idea. So
It's
if
a
it's an idea
backdoor
that
attempt
nobody
to
likes, so
publicly
that,
make elections public.
right, okay. That will be on our list to talk about. But I am not hearing bunch of enthusiasm for it at this point.
Are we allowed to ask where the idea came from?
That came from one of the counselors.
I know.
And has been expressed half a dozen times by Counselor Gallegos
Okay,
at our meetings here.
but not knowing who, it's not proper to ask where it came from among the council?
I would, you know, why don't you try and guess?
I don't wanna do that, you know, that's not necessary. I'm not judging.
Because I don't think people want, you know, their I'll tell you after the meeting.
I have one question.
Yes.
You had said that going to 300% of the mayoral rate would put it over $1 million. Does that 200% make it $1.5 million, $1.50 million?
No,
Because it's 350,000 now, and it's 200% in addition, so it would be an extra
No, no, no.
700,000. It's 200% in addition.
No, it's 200%.
Total, it's not total. That was the issue I thought before, and was the additional payments would be 200%. So that would put it over $1 million at the 200% level.
No, let's go back and look, that's not what any of us voted on.
I know, I was opposed to it, and that's what I was told last time, but, and I.
It's, right now, a better way to put it than 200% perhaps is twice and thrice. So let's use those terms. Right now, what our recommendation is for everybody, councilors and mayors, is twice the amount.
In
Okay?
addition to what you already get.
No, the maximum amount is
Clarify the language.
twice the amount.
Right.
Okay?
That they can spend.
That they could, in other words, if you're the lucky person who gets $45,000, you can qualify for matching funds for an additional $45,000. Okay? That's the way it is now. That's what we recommended.
Okay, I'd like to clarify because when I wrote up my concerns, one of my concerns was I thought it was misrepresented because I said the way this reads is it gives an extra 200% on top of the existing. I said I think that's wrong, and I was told no, that was the proposal. So if we go back and look at that, because
I don't recall that ever being a proposal.
It was my understanding that it was supposed to be twice that.
Yes,
Yeah,
that was
that's
what
always
we were told.
my understanding.
But
And
so
now
maybe
we're
we
talking-
need to change the language, so it doesn't say 200%.
No, I think it does, I'm pretty sure that it says that to put it in later, put it that if you get 45,000, you're able to go up to 90,000 with match.
check that because I think that's not the way it reads. and that's
Right.
not the concern I had.
I think it reads that you're.
Well, we can check it.
I think it reads the maximum amount is 200%.
Of course, we should recheck it, but I do agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I've used that limit in campaigns.
Right.
But that's no longer applicable legally.
But let's make sure, everybody let's take a look at that to make sure there's no concern about that. But the issue will be whether in the mayor's race we make a recommendation that it be that the maximum be 3 times the amount of the initial distribution.
Yes.
All right.
And I'll double check with the folks that, I'll go through every.
Go through.
Make sure we've got all the different language.
Yeah, make sure that take a look at the bill that's actually before the council.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Johnson.
This is for common cause. Have you gone back and mashed the numbers together to see how that would have played out in previous elections for the mayor? Would there have been enough money and still allocated all the money to all the candidates in the council races as well? If you trebled it?
You mean, is there enough money in the fund right now?
No,
In order to
no.
vote?
And under a previous election, where we're talking about the same thing, you're gonna match it 100%.
Right.
Would there have been enough money to triple it for the mayoral candidates? Because I think we would want to check the soundness of that and whether there needs to be an adjustment to the allocation in order to accomplish something like that.
I think that could be done independent of the charter.
I know, but I wouldn't want to recommend it if it's not fundable.
Well, I think what gives me some comfort is the fact that everybody that seems to be having discussions about running for mayor in 2017 says that their minimum budget is somewhere between 1.5 and $2 million. They are all going private financing. I think anybody who elects public financing is going to be a campaign that might be more populist